And we'll go ahead and get this show on the road here. I'm going to share the agenda real quick. If I can find it. There it is. Can everybody see that?
Yes.
Okay, good. Um, so I think we'll just start the meeting off with a quick introduction here. We have a really good group of speakers lined up for you today, so I think everybody's going to enjoy today's meeting. Before we get started with the agenda, maybe we can go through introductions, um, just to make sure I have everybody documented here. So I'm just going to go down my list as I see it. It looks like they're pretty alphabetical, so or maybe not. I can't really tell. Anyway, Amy,
Yes, sir. Hartford County DPW.
thank you. Ed,
Ed Stilts with BMC.
thanks, Ed. Randy, Randy, you're muted if you're trying to speak. Okay. Amanda,
Good morning, Amanda Rutherford with the U.S. Department of Transportation Maritime Administration.
thank you. Armand,
Yes, good morning, everybody. Armand Patella with the Maryland Motor Truck Association. I can't believe we have a representative from Marriott on here. Good job.
let's see. Brad,
Hi, Bradley Smith, Maryland Port.
thank you. Well, names keep moving around. Brian,
Hey, good morning. Brian Hammock with CSX Transportation.
thanks. Charlene,
Charlene Mingus, BMC.
thanks. Charlene, Dan,
Dan Blevins, Wilmapco,
yep.
Dan
Other Dan.
and the other Dan.
Thanks, Dan.
Let's see. David Cookson.
Yeah, David Cookson with the Howard County Office of Transportation.
Thank you. Deborah.
Hi, Deborah Price with Baltimore County DPW&T.
Dominic.
Good morning, Dominic Skirty, Maryland Port Administration.
Other Ed.
Hello, Ed Mahalski, Ecologics Group.
Greg.
Hi, Greg Demand from GSM Consulting.
Thank you. Harry.
Good morning, Harry Romano from the Texas A&M Transportation Institute. I'm here on behalf of the State Highway Administration.
Cool. Jacqueline.
Jacqueline Thorne, Maryland DOT, Office of Rail and Intermodal Freight.
Thank you. Kip.
Kip Snell, Community College of Baltimore County.
Lakeisha.
Hi, Lakeisha Markley. I'm here for Maryland State Highway Administration.
Let's see. Lewis.
Hi, Lewis Campion, Maryland Motor Truck Association.
Thank you. Nanette.
Hey, good morning. Nanette Shiki. I'm with Texas A&M Transportation Institute and supporting Maryland State Highway Administration after many, many moons at MDOT. Thank you.
Let's see. Did I get it? Let's see. Nicole. Did I get you? I didn't get you yet.
Not yet. Good morning. Nicole Katsikides, Texas A&M Transportation Institute.
Tim.
Morning, Tim Briggs, Transit Planner, BMC.
Thank you. Todd.
Lang, BMC.
Thank you. And Miss Dean, I think is last.
Yes, Darren Dean with the Maryland Port Administration.
Thank you. So I think did I miss anybody? If I missed anybody. Oh yeah, I see Amy, Amy number 2, Amy W.
Amy Wetterscott. Yep. Apologies for joining late. I'm here on behalf of Amtrak.
Thank you. Anybody else I missed?
Yeah.
Randy, if you can get on, I still haven't, I'm not sure. I don't think you've joined in the past, so.
Hi, Keith. This is Debbie Grote with the Baltimore Regional Cooperative Purchasing Committee, BMC.
I'm sorry, Debbie. I did see your name in there.
That's okay.
And I now see Dan Spack has joined us.
Yes, good morning. And Tom Harrington with MWCOG.
Okay, I'm sorry I missed you too. Man, I missed a lot. I think I got everybody now though. So I don't see our chair on here, Tom. So I'll just do a quick introduction. So this meeting, we have 3 speakers today. I think you're really going to enjoy them. Some of you may have seen Greg Mann at the Delmarva Winter Freight meeting, and he gave a similar presentation there. And I thought it was really very interesting, so I thought you guys would all enjoy that. We also have a meeting or a presentation from Dominic Skirty from the Port Administration and Ed Stilk from BMC. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen and I'm going to turn it over to, let's see, who's first on my agenda. First is Dominic. Do you have your presentation, Dominic?
Yeah, let me.
So Dominic, I saw some really interesting news from the port that you've had the second best year since. Yeah, so that's pretty good.
Can you see that, Keith?
Yeah, we can see it. Thank you.
Okay.
So Dominic is the Director of Planning for the Maryland Port Administration, and I'll just go ahead and turn this over to you, Dominic, and you can take it from here.
Thank you, everyone. Good morning. Just giving a brief overview of the Port of Baltimore, where things stand. The Maryland, as most of you know, the Maryland Port Administration is not the entire Port of Baltimore. We own 6 terminals in and around the Port of Baltimore. In addition, we are the local sponsor for the Army Corps of Engineers for dredging of the channels. We have a mission that's very clear and succinct, and that's to stimulate the flow of waterborne commerce through the ports in the state in a manner that provides an economic benefit to Marylanders. Like I said, in addition to the terminals, the diagram on the right shows various facilities where we put our dredged material. Looking at the economic impact in our stats, the port's directly responsible for 20,000 jobs in the state of Maryland, with 60% of those located in the Baltimore City and Baltimore County areas. Overall, there's over 270,000 jobs that are related to the port's cargo. We have $3.9 billion in Maryland business revenue that the port activity generates. And as the governor announced yesterday, we handled about 50 million tons of international cargo through the port, and that was our second highest total. And that cargo was valued at over $60 billion. We're the second largest port in autos and light trucks. The first in what we term is roll-on, roll-off cargo. That's heavy equipment and machinery. We're the second largest port for imported sugar, thanks to Domino. Last year, like I mentioned, 65 billion in cargo, and that was 10th amongst all ports. And the 50 million tons in cargo represents the 11th largest amongst all ports in the United States. Looking at specific to MPA terminals, last year we handled a little over 11 million tons. That was our third best total. And you can kind of see with the graph how 2024 went down, and that was due to the elision at the Francis Scott Key Bridge. So we are still recovering from that. And those recovery estimates are still underway. Looking at some major projects that we're doing, the Howard Street Tunnel, and Brad, chime in if I say anything wrong. That project's an estimated $495 million project, and it's not just the tunnel itself, but there are, besides the tunnel, 21 other clearance projects between Baltimore and Philadelphia that will enable CSX to double stack from Florida up through the New England area. That project is nearing completion, and we should achieve double stack clearance hopefully sometime later this spring, maybe by next month. We also have major climate resiliency project going on at Dundalk Marine Terminal. These are actually 3 separate projects. One is to install a box culvert within Dundalk Marine Terminal, along with lateral drains to help with intense flooding that could happen during high intensity rain events. In addition, we're building what we call a sea curb, which is a perimeter barrier around the terminal, and installing storm drains. These will help us prevent storm surge from overtaking the terminal. That project's a little over $71 million. It's currently in construction and should be completed in our fiscal 2027. So that there is a picture of the First Street box culvert underway. At Seagirt Marine Terminal, that is a terminal that is leased to Ports America Chesapeake in a long-term concession agreement. That is one of our more successful P3s in the state of Maryland. In addition to what Ports America Chesapeake had to invest at the beginning, they've gone far and beyond that level, and they've invested over $535 million in that terminal. They have, in addition to building a deeper berth 4 there, they completed deepening berth 3 to handle larger Panamax ships, and then they're now doing a lot of terminal work there as well. Last year, we completed the reconstruction of Fairfield Marine Terminal Pier 4. That pier was taken out of service due to structural concerns. Like I said, we started that construction process in 2023 and completed that in July of 2025. Our next major project will be the reconstruction of Dundalk Marine Terminal berths 11 through 13. The MPA received a nearly $31 million infra grant on that. We're currently in NEPA, and that is scheduled to be completed next month. We will then start the procurement process and hope to begin construction on that in 2028. That is the first phase of that project, and that overall project will probably take about 10 years to complete as we keep continually moving along that berth structure. Some other private and terminal investments. A lot of you saw the news that Trade Point Atlantic and Terminal Investment Limited is building a new container terminal over at the former Sparrows Point site. Late last year, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers issued a permit for that. That permit authorizes a 3,000 linear foot marginal wharf with ship-to-shore cranes. There will also be dredging over there that I believe has begun, and that will give the Port of Baltimore 2 container terminals. So some other projects on the dredge side, your dredge management program. That is the program by which we have a 20-year plan to ensure that we have a place to put all the dredge material. As many of you know, Maryland prohibits open water placement of its dredge material. We handle roughly 4.5 million cubic yards of dredge material annually. And we have to find places to put that. So we do that by building dredge material containment facilities in the Baltimore area, those being Cox Creek, Masonville. Formerly, we used Hart Miller Island that's been closed to new dredging. In addition, for the dredge material that we scoop up from further down the bay, we currently place at Poplar Island and then soon to be mid-bay. One of the new projects that was authorized is the Seagirt Loop Channel Deepening Project. Half of that channel is dredged to 50 feet. That's pictured there in the orange. It was authorized to dredge that full channel to 50 feet, and hopefully that dredging will begin in about a year. We're waiting on congressional authorization of that. I mentioned Poplar Island. This was MPA's first big project in the Bay. It's an international model for using dredge material. You can see kind of pictures that depict what that looked like in 1997. It was just a handful of small islands, probably totaling less than 5 acres. Today, that is well over 1,200 acres. However, 1,700 acres there. However, that project is nearly complete. It'll probably no longer be able to accept material sometime in the 2030s, 2030, 2031 area. So with that, we are starting the Mid-Chesapeake Bay Island Ecosystem Project, Mid-Bay as we call it. That will rebuild 2 islands off of Dorchester County, Barron Island and James Island. That will provide, increase that to 2,100 acres, those 2 islands, and that will provide enough capacity for approximately 50 years. So we're trying to get that up and running. Barron Island has started already. James Island should start this summer. That will, like I said, we're hoping to start those projects so that they can begin accepting dredge material sometime around 2030. And through its dredging program, the MPA, Port of Baltimore, is Maryland's leading creator of wetlands, while the port remains one of its top economic engines. Kind of see some other projects there. And with that, I'd be happy to take any questions.
Anybody have any questions for Dominic? If nobody else does, I'll ask one. And totally probably off topic, and I'm not sure you can answer this. And maybe there hasn't been a whole lot of impact yet, but have you guys noticed any impacts as a result of the Iran conflict?
It's probably too soon to tell on that, Keith. The biggest impact that I would see right off the bat will be the cost of shipping goods. As some of you, if you drive around, you see diesel now well over $5 a gallon. In addition, I'm hearing, the steamship lines adding fuel surcharges to their bills of lading. So I think, you'll see it, that'll increase the cost of goods. It could take a little longer for goods to arrive from one place to another, specifically from Asia. For those that were starting to return to the Suez Canal, they're going to go back to using the route that goes around the Horn of Africa. But a little too soon, I think, to tell the effects of any impact from the war in Iran on port activity here.
Yeah, I thought it might be. What about the tariffs? Did that have any impact?
Tariffs had some impact. As I tell people, it'd be nice if there was just one, variable, but you have a lot of things. Tariffs do increase the cost of goods somewhat. We did hear that a lot of companies chose to eat some of those tariffs because they raised prices during COVID. And then when some of that price increases abated, they didn't really lower their prices. So they ate part of that tariff. But you had that. You have higher interest rates affecting things, compared to 4 years ago. So there's a lot. So tariffs probably had somewhat of an impact. Not, like I said, but as the governor reported yesterday, it was our second best year ever. Ports America, Chesapeake's reported last year was a record year for them at the container terminal. So overall, it's probably had some impact, not a major significant downward impact though that we're aware of.
Nice. Anybody else have any questions?
If I could, one of the things that the regional procurement managers are looking for is if there's any kind of indicator reports on the changes as we're talking about here, whether it's the war or anything else. In particular, they are concerned about chemicals for water treatment that come through the port. Does the Port of Baltimore create any kind of report that would help in supply chain kind of decisions on what's being diverted or slowed down deliveries?
We do not, and we have, I would say, limited view of that. It would be like a later, we get that information later from other sources that people could tell. Like we use, federal reporting like USA Trade Online would tell us, but we don't get any advance notice necessarily of changes of specific commodities.
Right. Okay. Thanks.
Okay. Anybody else?
I have a question. I know, and I don't know a lot about the expansion of Trayport and Atlantic and all, but I am familiar with Broading Highway, that stretch through there. I worked on the project with State Highway when they redid a lot of Broading Highway, Broading Highway, in front of the port. And my question to you is, are there any long-term plans for widening and or replacing that bridge over the CSX to improve traffic along there?
I think that is a Baltimore City-owned bridge, if I'm thinking of the correct bridge, Amy.
Yeah, I know it's really weird. It's like State Highway's right there, and then you got the port, and then you got Baltimore County, and Baltimore City's right there too. It's kind of like a hodgepodge of all the agencies.
Yeah, and I think where you're talking about if
you're
part of
from the port coming out of I guess the northern or eastern port entrance, the main entrance, if you were to turn right, they go up and they go right over that CSX bridge.
I think they get onto Keith Avenue.
Yes.
Yeah, that is, I think, a city-owned, and I think, and Jill's on with me, but I believe in the city long-term CTP plan, they may have plans for that.
You know what? I'm not talking about the one towards Keith Avenue. I apologize. I'm talking if you were like going up towards the Key Bridge.
Oh, towards the Key Bridge.
Yeah, before the little cut over to.
Oh, that's over Norfolk Southern then.
I got my bearings backwards. I apologize.
Yeah, that's no, I don't know of any plans to replace that bridge over I believe that's a Norfolk Southern crossing that's a Norfolk Southern rail that goes underneath there. And
I just know it's a bottleneck always, and it always has been for a long time. I was just curious with the additional, especially with Trade Point right up the road, you're back and forth kind of thing.
Yeah, I don't know of any plans to replace that bridge. I don't believe there are. That would be I guess State Highway.
State Highway, I think so. I just didn't know if you might have been in the know.
No, I am not in the. Yeah, we have no. Do not believe there are any plans. I believe if there were, we would know about it, considering the proximity to the port. So right now, I would say there are no plans to replace that.
Okay, I'll keep my fingers crossed for you.
Okay. Thanks, Dominic. And if there's no more questions, we'll go ahead and move on to our next speaker. If you can close out, Dominic, so we can get the next presentation pulled up.
I'm trying to figure out how to close this, Keith. I'm sorry.
No problem. While you're doing that, just let me introduce our next guest. As I mentioned earlier, I saw Greg at the Delaware Winter Freight meeting, and I immediately thought he'd be a great speaker for us. Some of you probably were at that meeting. Lakeisha, I know you were. And I think Greg may have made a few minor changes to make it a little bit more Baltimore area friendly. But Greg Mann currently works as an advisor to several unmanned aerial systems companies, including Alaris Pro, which is the world's leading drone fleet management software platform. Greg has an MBA from the Wharton School at the University of Pennsylvania, and his BS is in commerce from the University of Virginia. And he's going to give us a presentation on drones and freight deliveries. So, Greg, I'm just going to go ahead and turn it over to you.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Keith. And it's great to join all of you today. I appreciate it. One of my clients, Alaris Pro, they're fully remote now, but they started actually right by down in the port area is where they began, and in one of the opportunity zones. I'm not as familiar with Baltimore, but it's right where the heliport is, or the helipads down there is where they started their journey. But they're a Maryland-based company. But thanks again for everybody for joining me today. We're going to look at how drones are emerging as a meaningful part of the freight ecosystem in particular. And my goal today is to give you practical clarity and not hype on where drones add value, what challenges exist, and why this region, and today we'll talk about the Baltimore specific region, is well positioned to make use of drones to carry freight. So I'm a Wilmington, Delaware native. That's where I'm based. And after living elsewhere for many, many years, including 23 years in Silicon Valley and San Francisco, I returned to Delaware in 2022. And since then, I've been actively working to support the startup ecosystem in Delaware and the Mid-Atlantic. During my Silicon Valley career, I worked as the only business team member for a variety of early stage startup companies in the podcasting, live video, and social gaming industries. But for the past 7 years, I've worked in the aviation industry in both full-time and fractional roles. So the photo you see of me on the left was taken in Mexico City when I served as the chief revenue officer for a company called Voom, V as in Victor, excuse me, Voom, which was an Airbus-owned helicopter booking platform that operated in both Mexico City and Sao Paulo, Brazil. Think of us like an Uber for helicopter service that Airbus launched to determine market demand and network operations ahead of a future launch of electric-powered aircraft as part of the service. After Voom ceased operations during COVID, I then began to work as a fractional revenue consultant for a variety of early-stage aviation startups, including MightyFly, which is an autonomous cargo delivery drone company. So the photo you see in the top right here is me taken with their MightyFly, their first working prototype at the Half Moon Bay Airport, just south of San Francisco. And then last year, I served as a member of the Delaware Department of Transportation's Advanced Air Mobility Working Group. You may often hear this term that's sort of federally initiated, called AAM, Advanced Air Mobility, is kind of the general term that putting drones, electric-powered aircraft, things like that under that umbrella. So I was part of the DELDOT working group, which has developed a blueprint for AAM policy in the state of Delaware. So as Kevin mentioned, I met him at the Winter Freight Conference in Dover, and he was kind enough to invite me here today to share my thoughts about the use of drones to carry freight. And today we'll cover the landscape, near-term opportunities, and what freight operators should watch closely in this evolving space. To understand where we're going, it helps to look back a little bit. Drone delivery today is exactly where air cargo was in the 1920s. Back then, planes were small, limited, and risky, but those tiny beginnings grew into an indispensable mode of global transport. And so drone logistics today resembles early aviation. Small, experimental, but accelerating very fast. And we now see real commercial operations, successful pilots, and clear regulatory pathways. And drones didn't just appear overnight. Early versions of drones started in the military with their roots as radio-controlled planes. As we moved into the 80s and 90s, the use of Predator and Reaper drone systems matured both the GPS and autonomous technologies. In the 2010s, the consumer drone boom accelerated the decline with the cost of hardware. The decline of the cost of hardware. Suddenly, autonomy became cheap, and commercial drones began to take off. Yes, that is pun intended, as costs dropped and the reliability improved. So we're now in the next phase with drones designed specifically for logistics and cargo movement. And in this emerging commercial era, we have rules-based adoption via the FAA involvement, such as Part 107 certification. So I want you to think of this evolution as drones graduating from radio-controlled toys into flying robots with a logistics brain. One way to think about drones and freight today is to think of the primary sectors that they are serving. And specifically, I like to highlight consumer as one, defense/government as the second, and then commercial as the third. And sometimes these often overlap. So many of you may already be familiar with Google's Wing platform, which is focused on partnering with DoorDash and other providers to deliver packages directly to consumers' homes. Similarly, Zipline has partnerships with Walmart and Chipotle for home delivery in select markets. But Zipline's first deliveries were actually made in Rwanda in 2016, 10 years ago, delivering blood and other medical supplies to remote communities. Many of today's freight drone companies are focusing heavily on serving the defense sector. A prime example is Anduril, which from its founding has been nearly 100% focused on building solutions for the U.S. Department of Defense. And then lastly, on the commercial side, there are companies like Mighty Fly and Elroy Air, which are focused on serving the enterprise business-to-business market by delivering freight, for example, between warehouses or from distribution centers to retail stores or hospitals. So my point with this slide is that drones carrying freight are already in use today, and their use across a variety of industries is only going to continue to increase. As I mentioned, the use of drones to carry freight is becoming a very real market, not just experimental R&D. The market's roughly $2 billion today, projected to reach $10 billion by 2030. And enterprise freight is driving most of this projected revenue, about 2/3 of the market. Consumer delivery via drone is growing rapidly as people's speed expectations shift. You think about Amazon Prime, 2-day delivery, everybody wants everything faster. The government and military are smaller today, but both of those groups, of course, strongly influence standards and technology development. Another way to think about drones and splitting up the market, the drone freight market, is in terms of small, medium, and large payloads. So smaller drones typically carry less than 10-pound payloads to deliver items such as medical samples, prescriptions, and dinner. Medium-sized drones with 10 to 100-pound payloads support industrial transfers of a specific part, warehouse-to-warehouse hops, and other B2B deliveries. And lastly, you have heavy payload drones, which are emerging for time-critical regional moves of large freight pallets, military supplies, and other heavier items. Put together, excuse me, these various types of drones, freight drones, fill the gaps between couriers, vans, ship, rail, and truck options. Drones really shine when speed matters. They win on speed as they're 2 to 5 times faster than ground transport, especially in congested areas. So their ideal use is for high-value, time-sensitive shipments, such as medicine or critical parts. Drones are not suitable for bulk freight, super heavy truckload volumes, or less time-sensitive payloads. They definitely lose on transporting bulk freight. If you need to move 500 pounds of lumber, you want to use a truck. Drones are for when the infrastructure or the timing becomes the bottleneck. So think of drones as a scalpel, precise, fast, and targeted, rather than a replacement for trucks, which in this analogy is like a sledgehammer. Now that we've established the scale and the landscape, let's look at the regulatory realities. As is often the case with new aviation solutions, the technology is ready before the regulation. Figuring out the regulation piece is the biggest unlock, perhaps even more so than technology itself. One key early milestone in the development of drones for freight was the 2016 launch of the FAA's Part 107 rule, which created the foundation for commercial drone use. Part 107 established pilot certifications and operational guidelines for drones weighing under 55 pounds. Another regulatory element is the use of remote ID. Think of remote ID as a drone's license plate that can be read by a variety of systems to note a drone's location, speed, and altitude. Also, drone operators today need to have a visual line of sight to their drones in the air via ground vehicles or a chase plane. But, and this is critically important for the freight drone business to scale, operators need to fly their drones with the acronym BVLOS, which stands for Beyond Visual Line of Sight. Right now, several waivers have been granted for BVLOS flights, but the real exciting news in this space is this spring, and I'm almost here in spring, I think, 2026 release of the FAA's Part 108 rule, which will grant BVLOS operations without needing to secure a waiver. And of course, in addition to the operational rules, these new types of freight drones will also need to be type certified by the FAA. The type certificates are critical in shaping the freight drone category by bringing aviation grade safety requirements to drones. And lastly, here in the Mid-Atlantic, and this slide sort of illustrates it quite a bit, is we face the unique challenges given the dense and complex airspace between Philly, Baltimore, Washington, and I also talk about my own home state's Dover Air Force Base. Easiest way to think about the different roles that federal and state governments play regarding drones is that the federal government's responsible for everything in the air. Type certifications, operator certificates, airspace regulations, for example, whereas the state and local governments handle everything on the ground, focusing on how drones affect people and property, impact privacy, and local land use. So these ground elements might include things like privacy and surveillance. States can pass laws limiting government drone use, like police surveillance, requiring warrants or mandating data destruction after certain periods. Another area that state and local governments get involved with is land use and zoning. They can use their powers to control where drones can take off and land, affecting local ordinances and property rights. For government operations, state legislators can create rules for state and local agencies that ban certain technology, like Chinese-made DJI drones due to security concerns, or authorizing drones for specific tasks such as wildfire management. And critical infrastructure. Laws often prohibit or restrict drone flights over sensitive sites such as prisons, power plants, or public events in order to prevent interference or security risks. So given all of the excitement and opportunities to use drones to carry freight, we also have to be realistic about the hurdles to widespread adoption. First of these is technical. Many of today's drones use electric-powered motors, and a big limiting factor with these motors is battery density. The amount of energy the battery can deliver to power takeoff, landing, and flight limits both the payload weight and the range of that flight. This limitation is one reason why many drone manufacturers are working on both gasoline-only engines as well as hybrid propulsion models, which combine both gas and electricity as their power sources. Second hurdle is operational. There's an evolving need for takeoff and landing infrastructure, electric charging infrastructure, airspace integration, and automated fleet software to handle autonomous operating drones. Third hurdle is economic. The industry is now moving from proof of concept pilots to paid operations, but it's still to be determined what the return on investment will be on using drones, especially once BVLOS operations are permitted. And lastly, and I ran into this quite a few times when I was at VOOM, is public perception. There's noise concerns, unfamiliarity with drones, and the workforce retraining are all critical pieces of the puzzle that need to be addressed before widespread adoption. To be clear, these challenges are solvable, but they require coordination across multiple sectors. Despite the many challenges, the opportunities remain strong for using drones to carry freight. Remember, as we discussed with the sledgehammer and scalpel analogy, drones will be used for particular situations and will soon become part of what I call the multimodal toolbox. Using drones, carriers, and 3PL operators, for example, will gain flexible routing and faster response time, along with a lower cost middle mile option. Using drones, governments gain resilience in emergencies, like when roads are washed out, as well as new inspection capabilities. With drones, industries like pharma, biotech, and manufacturing benefit from faster on-demand speed in their supply chains. To be clear, drones do not compete with trucks. They do not compete with trucks. They complement them as a new multimodal option. So I see as, despite the challenges, the opportunity is massive. Drones are sort of the last missing piece in the multimodal toolbox, not replacing trucks or planes, but linking them more intelligently. So I've given you a high-level overview, a couple different things. So let's bring it a little bit closer to home and talk about Baltimore and the Mid-Atlantic in particular. So let's talk about some of the strengths that I see from the Baltimore specifically area. It's world-class port infrastructure. Dominic just gave us the port update. It's a primary hub for roll-on, roll-off cargo and autos and the other things, sugar we talked about. Its existing berth management and engineering departments have already begun, as my understanding, to integrate drones for infrastructure inspection, providing a foundational, what I call technical literacy, among key maritime stakeholders. There's a geographic advantage. Baltimore sits in the heart of the last mile for the Northeast Corridor. So its proximity to major distribution hubs and surrounding counties, like Cecil and Hartford, makes it a natural endpoint for autonomous mid-mile delivery from larger inland warehouses. There's state level support. Maryland actually has a centralized regulatory environment, SB 370, which prevents a patchwork of conflicting county level drone laws. So this provides a predictable legal landscape for companies looking to invest in drone corridors. And there's existing logistics density, with a high concentration of e-commerce fulfillment centers already operating in the Baltimore area. The demand for high velocity, small parcel delivery is already proven and high. Now, there obviously the strengths, that along comes the weaknesses as well. Baltimore, as everyone knows, is nestled between BWI and Martin State Airport. Much of the city actually falls under what's called Class B or D controlled airspace, requiring strict FAA low altitude approvals, which can throttle the spontaneity of on-demand delivery. There's current payload limits. Most commercially viable drones this year, 2026, are still optimized for payloads under 55 pounds. So for a port city that moves heavy automotive and machinery parts, drones currently remain a very niche solution for documents, medical supplies, or small electronics rather than bulk freight. And as I mentioned earlier, there's the public noise and privacy concerns. There's Baltimore's residential density means that a high frequency drone traffic is likely to face some social pushback regarding acoustic pollution and privacy, potentially leading to no-fly zones over certain neighborhoods. But let's talk about the opportunities. There's B2B maritime logistics. Drones can facilitate ship-to-shore and ship-to-ship deliveries of manifest, critical repair parts, or medical kits to vessels anchored in Chesapeake Bay, reducing the need for expensive, carbon-intensive pilot boat trips. Opportunities as well as Johns Hopkins is a medical logistics hub with world-renowned places like Hopkins, University of Maryland Medical Center. Baltimore is perfectly positioned to lead in the autonomous transport of time-sensitive pathology samples, organs, and specialized medications between campus locations. And lastly, it's just a couple threats I want to highlight. There's weather volatility. The Chesapeake Bay region's prone to sudden fog, high winds, icing conditions. Talked about some of the fortifications Dominic's mentioning for storms at different ports. These environmental factors can ground a drone fleet, making them less reliable than traditional trucking for just-in-time logistics. Cybersecurity and signal interference. As a major East Coast hub, Baltimore region is a high traffic area for radio frequency signals. The threat of GPS jamming or signal spoofing poses a risk to autonomous fleets operating near sensitive government and military installations. And then there's the regulatory lag. I mentioned this a little bit earlier, but technology is advancing at a 34% compound annual growth rate. Federal BVLOS regulations still require significant waivers. Again, hopefully that's going to change this spring. If the FAA does not streamline these certifications, Baltimore may lose its competitive edge to more drone-friendly international ports. So the last thing I want to say is that the use of drones to carry freight is emerging now. It's no longer speculative, and that's why I wanted to put all this on everybody's radar. And success depends on selecting the right use cases, designing the flight corridors, and forming partnerships. So the organizations and regions that lean in early will shape how this exciting new system develops. So I appreciate your time. I will stop the sharing, and I am happy to answer any questions that folks have. I will even turn on my video. There's me.
Well, thank you, Greg. Yeah, is there any questions for Greg? That was a lot of info to take in.
It is a lot. I realize it's a lot to digest. This is just an appetizer, teaser, so to speak, for folks who are interested in understanding, at least at a high level, what's going on with drones to move cargo and freight.
I had the benefit of hearing it twice. I was able to absorb some of it.
So the message is sinking in for you, Keith. So go ahead, Louis. I see your hands up.
Yeah, thanks, Greg. This is fascinating. The use case is a little different, but I'm wondering if you're aware, like if the Postal Service is looking at drone deliveries, because I know we hear so much about sort of the challenges they have financially, particularly with providing service to obscure locations, right? That, I mean, it seems to me like this is an opportunity because it's generally low value, low weight. I know it's not high density, but if you get past that beyond visual line of sight piece, the ability to deliver more cost effectively into a very low yeah, I mean, a very obscure, isolated area.
Yeah, and I think that will happen, Lewis. And in fact, it's interesting. In one of my consulting projects, when I was with Mighty Fly, I actually had a number of conversations with actually the Australia Post. It's a long reason why it was Australia, but for exactly that. Obviously, Australia is an enormous continent, right, with very spread out folks and places. So they were looking at drones to move less so from sort of the home delivery piece of the puzzle, but more the bulk of moving, bundles of mail to sort of a more localized distribution center more effectively than using trucks along those lines. I mean, one of the issues with that is a super, super end use case, right? I don't know the specifics about what the U.S. Postal Service might be looking at right now, Lewis, but what I do know, eventually that's going to make a lot of sense versus sending out trucks to those specific endpoints and consumer endpoints along those lines. But I have had those conversations with the Australia Postal Service about this exact scenario.
Thank you.
Yep.
I am going to treat you the way you treat me. I'm going to treat you the way you treat me.
Ooh, might want to mute someone, Keith.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Any
what's going
other
on
any other questions that folks have?
I'll ask one more if nobody else has one, because I'm kind of fascinated by this. And so you mentioned about other, talking about the competitiveness aspect at the end, Greg, when you mentioned about, remaining port competitive.
Mm-hmm.
Are there other ports that you deem as being very drone friendly?
I don't know the specifics, Lewis, about other ports, but if you think about it, a really great use case is, I looked a little bit about this actually in Asia, in Singapore. If you think about the ship to shore stuff, which as I mentioned, so I don't know the specifics of it. My clients haven't been specifically focused on the ports to be completely transparent about this. But fundamentally, and I've seen this across my career with a number of different technologies as well, oftentimes when we talk about these new technologies, you talk about adoption of it and places are slow, but fundamentally it comes down to individuals at different organizations who are willing to sort of take that initiative and willing to go through a few bumps of the learning process, right? So it might be somebody, I'm just broadly speaking, at the Port of Baltimore who's going to say, hey, this is going to be in my remit, right? I'm going to figure out how we can best use drones, whether it's from a ship to shore perspective or moving goods and cargo to more inland locations to distribution centers along those lines. It's ultimately one or two individuals who are going to take the initiative and start experimenting, because that's what this is at this early stage. I mean, it's happening, but the commercial operations are still nascent. Again, I don't know specifics about other ports who might be doing this sort of more competitively than Baltimore is right now.
Thank you.
And Katsikides, forgive me. Nicole,
Hi.
thank you.
No, it's okay. Really great presentation. I am curious about your thoughts related to, so this group that you're talking to is very is like the front line to the local communities and citizens. And one of the things we deal with freight that's challenging are the NIMBYs. People want their freight, but they don't like the way they get it, and they don't like trucks, and they don't like truck parking.
Right.
So, what are some things, some proactive things, or things that you think in your experience that maybe we ought to be doing at the local level, or even the way the state can support the local governments to ready citizens and communities and neighborhoods for this type of delivery, and to be prepared and maybe to mitigate some of the impacts that drones may cause, like noise or just airspace distraction, stuff like that?
It's a great question, Nicole, and thank you for asking that one. I dealt with this specifically in San Francisco when we were looking at bringing our helicopter service to the city. And there were a lot of challenges, including the community. So the biggest things that I would say is you have to think about sort of community awareness, and that comes back to like education, right? And so whether you're going to say it's a town hall meeting to talk about what drones are, right, and what they aren't. And some of you may recall, like about a year ago, there was basically a bunch of drones flying in New Jersey that everybody completely freaked out that it was UFOs and things like that, because it just wasn't enough community understanding about drones being up there in the air and doing things and stuff like that. So I hate to say this because it's a lot of work, but it's that sort of day-to-day continually informing the community, explaining to them what these drones are, You know, you're going to hear this noise. It's nothing to be freaked out about. Here's what a drone looks like. We're going to do is come down to the port. We're going to show you what our fleet of drones looks like as an example. You're never going to reach everybody in the community, of course, but it's a lot of being proactive about it as opposed to reactive is sort of the basic advice that I can give you in this regard. If you know that there's going to be a drone we call them vertiports, if you will, or where drones are going to be launched from is going to be near a residential community as an example, based on logistics, not the best spot to put something like that. It's important to reach out to that community, get their feedback on it, explain, and it might be some mitigation where you're going to say, hey, we're not going to fly after 10 o'clock at night or after 9 o'clock at night. You know, won't fly between 10 p.m. and 6 a.m., something like that, to mitigate some of the noise. But it's being in front of that as opposed to, in this case, I wouldn't say asking for permission, using that sort of forgiveness versus permission parable, but I would definitely get ahead of it as opposed to being reactive, because once it becomes reactive, that's when everybody starts throwing monkey wrenches into the things and operations just become curtailed. This is what happened to us in San Francisco, and for a number of different reasons, including public acceptance. It ground everything to a halt. But the last point I wanted to make is to involve as best you can local and state government officials when you're educating the public about this. Makes a huge, huge difference. So thanks for that question, Nicole. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Appreciate the answer.
My pleasure. Any other questions, Keith? I want to keep us on time, so
we're good on
Keith
time.
can share my email. Keith can share my email. If anybody has any other questions or whatnot, feel free to reach out to me as well.
Yep. All right. Thanks, Greg. We really appreciate that. It was great. And our final speaker is Ed Stilt from right here at BMC. Ed is our transportation analyst, and he's going to give us some interesting analysis of our current critical urban freight corridors in the Baltimore region. And just going to go ahead and turn it over to you, Ed, and you can pull up your presentation.
Okay, Keith, can you see my screen?
Nope, just see you right now.
I was hoping that would not happen. Let's see. Give me 1 second to bear with me. Screen to, oh, share. That would help, wouldn't it? How about?
It's popping up now, yeah.
Okay,
There you
great.
go.
So good. So anyway, let me get myself off of here now too. Perfect. All right, everybody, thanks for bearing with me there. So again, my name's Ed Stilts, and at BMC, I work with vehicle probe data for congestion analysis primarily, and I'm also the project manager for the BMC traffic count program. And our core products are a quarterly congestion analysis report and the BMC online CMP tool. So my work isn't necessarily focused on freight traffic, but a while back I was given this list of critical urban freight corridors, and I was asked what kind of assessment and analysis I could do with our available tools. So that's what I'm going to talk to you about today. So this is as much for me as it is for anybody else, because I just had to learn about these. So what are critical urban freight corridors? Well, they come from the FAST Act and the attempt to establish a national highway freight network, and the CUFCs are one of the 4 subsystems of the network. And they're designated for urbanized areas with a population over 500,000 people. And they're public roads that meet one of 4 elements. One, they connect to an intermodal facility, to a primary highway freight system, to connect to the interstate system, or intermodal freight facility. They're within a corridor of a PHFS route that's an alternative highway option for goods movement. They serve as a major freight generator, logistics center, manufacturing warehouse, or industrial land, or they're just important to freight movement. So the BRTB designated 25 miles of CUFCs back in 2017. That was round 1. And then there were additional 25 miles for round 2, and the BRTB approved the resolution in January of 2024. So they've been around a while. And this is the list of the 50 miles of critical urban freight corridors that we have. And I'll go into more detail with a more close-up view of that in a moment. This is the site map of the corridors to give you an idea of how they're spread across the region. And so when these were brought to me, so what can we do with these, with the available tools that we have? Well, I work with the RITIS Probe Data Analytics Suite, and we do have access to the NPM RDS NRIX trucks data set. So that's great. And we, within the suite, I figured if this was given to me, what can you use? So I thought, well, maybe travel times at peak hours would be of some interest. Congestion scans with the percentage of free flow speeds. And then with our traffic counts, I thought that using the BMC traffic count database and the SHA TMS system, we could get truck volumes along these available corridors. And then for presentation purposes, I figured, well, let's just be simple for now. And I decided on just look at 2024, the first half and the second half of the year, compare the travel times, the percentage of free flow speeds, and see what available traffic counts that we have. So this is the list a little, so you can see a little bit more. So with the fields, we have the route number, which is just arbitrary with the order they came out of RIS. The segments, the peak hours of congestion, segment length in miles, and the travel time in minutes for the first and second half of 2024, along with the percent change. You'll see a grayed out location. That's CUFC 19. That's just a small intersection segment in New Windsor. And that location might have to be reevaluated. As small as it is, I mean, maybe we could get a turning movement class count there or something that would be of some value, but I'm not really sure. And just a side note, the Route 6, which is New Ridge Road, doesn't happen to be in the National Highway System or the INRIX truck data set. So I did a workaround with INRIX XD data for the time being, which doesn't have trucks, but we can, if we move forward with this, we can address that that particular location. So from the idea that I had, this would be from a static report, and this is the example of what I can pull from the PDA suite. So in this, we see the map data is the congestion percentage or percentage of free flow speed. And so we're looking at first half of the year on the left and the second half on the right. So I'm showing peak hour, the length in miles, and the average travel times of the first and second half, and the percentage change, red for decrease, green for things getting better, of course. And for each location, I also did a traffic count map with available historical traffic counts for simple AADT and truck traffic. So with this, we could be looking, right now I'm just comparing the available years that I have, but we can go even deeper than that. And this is just, I just wanted to show you a second location. This is O'Donnell Street from Conklin Street to the city line. Much the same thing here, showing the congestion percentages and also the available traffic counts that we have. Now, that would just be something that I could do in-house for the beginnings of a static report. But just recently, I found online, I was searching through, you're able to go through an ArcGIS online, search available topics. And I found this from M.SHA. It's a map before we adopted the critical urban freight corridors in 2024. So this is a little earlier. The routes were a little different, but it's an interactive map pre-approval. And I thought this would be a really great template to get started. Maybe I will reach out to the author of this map if we decide to go forward with the corridors and doing something with it. So he has an interactive map with a lot more data. There's a lot more historical data. I think there were like 70 something fields. Don't quote me exactly on that. But while BMC, we could do something with this from scratch with our GIS team, I'm sure. But if we decide that this is something that's useful, I wouldn't want to reinvent the wheel. So we may go to this particular online map, interactive map, as something to start as a base. So it's something that we'll look into in the future. And just quick summary. Again, this was something that was handed to me, and I really wanted to get this out in front of the Freight Movement Task Force with the great work that you all do to see if these CUFCs and what we could possibly do with this data is something that's of use. So we'd be looking to possibly revisit the 50 miles of corridors that we have now and possibly make some revisions. And the PDA suite may provide some tools for future analysis. And again, this could be, I just did the year 2024. Do we want to look at biannually? We want to look at annual comparisons. Do we want to do anything at all with them? But there is a really good potential for an ArcGIS interactive mapping tool, something that we could even include in the the BMC online CMP tool. I think it would be a great layer addition. And we're just basically open to ideas. And, just ending here, I just wanted to throw this out to you. I don't need to know anything now, but this is my contact information as we move forward with this. If anyone's interested in these critical urban freight corridors and what BMC may do to present them in a useful manner, I'd love to hear from you. So Keith, thanks. That's really all I had today.
Yeah, thanks, Ed. And we already have a question before I even asked if there's any questions. So Nicole.
Sure,
Hi, Ed.
Nicole.
I just wanted to make you aware, are you familiar or did you look at this, the Maryland Roadway Performance Tool that SHA provides?
I kind of saw that. I didn't get a detailed look at it though.
Okay, yeah, we'd be happy to meet with you offline and go through it because it does include the Maryland Freight Network, including the critical urban and critical rural corridors. And you can see different performance measures and compare, and you can download that information and put it into an ArcGIS format. But you can get different measures like anything from delay to commodity value, and it maps it at the click of a button, and also gives summary measures. So if you wanted summary measures of the urban and rural corridors or the freight network by county, or other things like even road functional class, it's all in that tool, and all of it, all of that data is available for you to use.
That would
and in
be
fact,
terrific.
Yeah, as part of the BMC Comprehensive Freight Study, I was actually pulling that data and putting it into a prototype Baltimore Freight Finder. So we can meet offline and talk about that, but I'll put the link to the MRPT in the chat. It's pretty easy to use if people are interested, but it's got everything already mapped and some 2024 interim data. It uses MDOT's INRIX XD data, which is really close to NPM RDS, and even
Right.
calculate some of the same measures that you would for the federal freight measures. So
Yeah,
let me
this
put
is
that-
exactly why I wanted to talk to the group. Thank you, Nicole, because
Sure.
this was one of the last things Regina Aris gave me before she retired, was to take a look at this. So I knew that coming to this meeting was exactly the place to go. So I really appreciate that, and I would love to meet with you to talk about it.
Sure, I'll get that set up.
Thank you so much.
Mhm.
Thanks. Lakeisha, looks like you have a question.
Sure.
And thank you for this presentation. It's very timely. Just FYI to everyone, we are in the process of getting ready to start the state. Well, we've kind of started a little bit, but starting the state freight plan updates for 2026. We will be meeting, just wanted to let you know that we will be coordinating with the MPOs to identify like if there are any updates to the 2024 locations that were identified previously. We do know that there was, or it underway is an update of the urban boundaries. And so we definitely need to take a look at the routes that were identified before and see if anything changes. We also just needed to kind of reach out anyway to the MPOs. We like to make sure that we have the latest, I guess, critical areas that you're interested in including in the list, which could end up being swapping out routes as well. But I just wanted to let you and everyone else know that will be underway shortly. So, thank you.
Oh, that's fantastic. Thanks for letting us know. And
Lakeisha,
Keith, I
what's-
guess we can.
Yeah, what's the timing on that, so we know what the kind of the urgency to look at
Yeah,
what we might consider as updates? Do you have a rough estimate on the timing of that?
there's definitely going to be some urgency with it. We have to be finished by September. Like the report updates by September. So we'll be reaching out to everyone within the next probably within the next month. Yeah, right now we're trying to get some things squared away. We're meeting internally as well. Meeting with our folks that are working on those urban boundary updates, and it's like functional class updates. There's a lot of federal updates happening, so we just want to make sure that we don't want to be in their way, but we want to make sure that we're, doing our due diligence and what we need to do for the state freight plan. So
Cool. Thank you.
it will
That's
most
awesome. Great.
likely.
No, I said thank you.
You're welcome.
That's great.
Okay.
Any other questions for Ed? Jill.
This is Jill Lemke from the Maryland Port Administration. I'm just curious how the urban freight corridors were identified and defined, in part because I know that there's a challenge with data, transportation information and data in Baltimore City because SHA has limited focus on Baltimore City. And we struggle all the time working with Baltimore City to preserve truck routes. And Baltimore City has a map of designated truck routes that we are constantly trying to defend. So I wanted to know a little bit more, maybe we can talk more offline, but how those are defined and chosen as critical urban freight corridors.
I think that would be one for you, Keith.
Yeah, I can probably address that a little bit. So SHA provided us a map of all the eligible segments, and it had a variety of criteria, truck volumes and proximity to warehouses and things like that. There was a lot of criteria that they established to create the eligible segments. And then we took those segments and we compared them to projects that are in our long-range transportation plan. So if there was any overlap between what SHA had defined as eligible segments and what we had defined as projects in the LRTP, we used that overlap and tried to figure out the best segments that would make sense. I tried to, if there was 3 segments consecutive, I tried to use all 3 of those segments. And then at the very end, we may have just thrown in a segment or 2 that was eligible just because we had mileage left that we didn't want to leave on the table. So I'm not going to deny that we just I'd like that Carroll County segment that's 0.8. We just wanted to get as close to our 25 miles as we could. But for the most part, it was an overlap of what SHA had defined as eligible segments and comparison to our long-range plan. Does that answer your question, Jill?
Yeah, it makes a bit more sense knowing that it's connected to what projects are in the LRTP. So yeah, that helps. Thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions? Thanks, Ed. Hearing none, you're off the hook now.
Thanks to everybody. It was a lot of information for me as well.
Yeah, and Nicole, Ed, and I can get together in the future here in the near future to work together. So our next meeting is scheduled. That's all the presentations we have, by the way. So our next meeting is scheduled for June 24th. That being said, we may have an opportunity, and Parto, if you're on the line, I think you are, we may have an opportunity to do a site visit to the Port of Baltimore in May. And that may or may not replace the June meeting, depending on participation in a site meeting. I think the 2 dates that we have right now are May 13th and May 12th and May 13th, or May 13th and May 14th. I'm not sure. I can't remember, but it's middle of May that we're looking at.
May 13 and May 14.
13 and 14. Thank you. And we're looking to do that in combination with the COG and their freight movement task force down there. So it could be a mix of people at each of the. We're looking to possibly do a morning session and an afternoon session, and it could be a mixture of Baltimore region and Washington region people. So I'm going to send something out probably later today because not everybody is on this call today. Obviously, that's on my my distribution list. I will say though that, and Partha, you can chime in as well, that we have limited space available for that, which is why we're trying to break it up into 2 sessions so we can get as many people as we can. But between the 2 task forces, we may not be able to get everybody in. So it may end up being a first come, first served type situation. But I'll send something out, trying to gather your feedback on what kind of interest we have for doing a site visit.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, Partha, you have anything to add as far as that is concerned?
Nothing else. We discussed about limitation we have for the tour. That's why we have 2 sessions at the same day, 13 or 14. We haven't finalized the date yet, but yeah, we can just do first come, first serve basis for the participant for these 2 tours. And if you need help on writing, let me know.
Okay. Yeah, we really appreciate you working with us on setting this up. So I think that's all I have, everybody. So if you have any questions for any of our speakers, you can shoot them to me. Or I think they're all on the distribution list from the invitation for this meeting. So you could send them directly to them if you want. But yeah, give you guys all 15 minutes of your time back. Appreciate you guys joining us. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Keith.
Thank you. Yep.